case we have for you today is of a successful, driven, and happy couple who were doing their best, their very best, to raise their son and live their life to the fullest. Until one day, their lives and the lives of everyone who knew them were turned upside down. This is the story of one of Bangladesh's most infamous crimes. This is the story of Sagar Sarowar and Meherun Runi. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aishwarya.
And I'm Aryaan.
And the case that I have for you today is one that has instilled a sense of sorrow and injustice in all of Bangladesh.
Ash, we have a big Bangladeshi listener
Huge.
community.
It's actually kind of funny and cute. We have our Instagram community channel, and sometimes we'll leave a message on there. And one of the most reacted to emojis is the Bangladesh flag, which I love so much. It's so random. It has no meaning in connection to the message we've sent. But
we love to see all the support we have. But Bangladesh has so many riveting crime stories that we're not always able to cover because of the slew of cases that we do cover. But this is one. The Meherun Runi case is one that has gripped Bangladesh till this date. Mm-hmm. And if you are into South Asian crime or crime at large, then we have some news for you. The Desi crime book is out now, not only on Amazon, wherever you get your books, the nearest bookstore, the nearest library, hopefully. But go buy the Desi crime book. Link is in the bio. And if you like hearing our voices more than you already do, you can also get the audiobook on Audible, where me and Ash have narrated stories, some of which have never, ever been covered on the podcast before, that are exclusively available on the book. So go check it out. Link is in the description. And with that, on with the case for today.
Yeah. Before I start this episode, I want to thank the Daily Star, a leading newspaper based in Bangladesh whose reporting on this case is our primary source of information. This story starts in 2012 in Dhaka, the modern and metropolitan capital of Bangladesh. In fact, the city resembles Delhi in the way that it's structured and built because Dhaka was also a prominent Mughal capital in the 17th century and the center of Muslim trade in Bengal. In this city, 13 years ago, lived the happy and well-to-do family of Sagar Sarowar, who at the time was 37 years old, Meherun Runi, who was 35 years old, and their 5-year-old son, the apple of their eye, Mahir Sarwar Meg, who they lovingly called Meg. Both Sagar and Meherun are an incredibly hardworking and successful couple, with both holding prominent positions within the media and journalistic circles of Dhaka. While Sagar was born in Dhaka, he had left Bangladesh in 2007 to work in Germany with Deutsche Welle, which is even today a large international broadcaster. However, he returns by 2011 and begins work with Masranga Television, the prominent news channel in Bangladesh. Other than his job with this news channel, Sagar is also a blogger and writes for a journalism website called Oh My News. He founded and leads the Forum for Energy Reporters Bangladesh, and he's the editor-in-chief of the online magazine Energy Bangla. But if you're thinking Sagar's resume is impressive, his wife is no less. Meherun is a senior reporter for the well-known news channel ATN Bangla, writes extensively on energy issues of Bangladesh in a host of online magazines, and is also a crime reporter. Everyone who knew the couple described them as incredible at what they did, but also as a couple whose world revolved around their son. Little Meg, who was born in 2007, had just completed their family and made it perfect. 2012 is just another normal year for the family, and February 10th, just another normal day. The husband and wife wake up in their 4th floor apartment situated in West Raja Bazaar, get ready for office, get their son ready for school, and leave the house. They spend their busy day working in their respective news channels, and by 2 p.m. that afternoon, Meherun returns to their home. She spends the rest of her day in her house, completing some work and preparing dinner for her family, waiting for all of them to return. Logs of the building register from that day tell us that around 4:52, a gentleman named Tawfiq went to Sagar and Meherun's apartment to visit them. However, there exists no record of him leaving. At around 7:30 p.m. that evening, Meg returns from a school picnic he had gone on in the morning and spends the rest of the evening with his mother in the house. Sometime that evening, Meherun gets a call from Sagar, who tells her that there's an unusually large amount of work piled up in his office and he may not be able to come home for dinner on time. He tells her not to wait up for him and to go to sleep instead, and that he'd come back home around midnight once his work is complete. After this point, there are very few things that we know for sure. We know for sure that there were guests over at the couple's residence that night that stayed for dinner. This apparently was a normal occurrence, and a lot of colleagues and friends would visit the couple on weekends. However, there are no records of who the guests were in the visitor log of the building. No records of the guest entering, no records of them leaving. We know someone was over for dinner because the couple's son will later tell the cops so, and the neighbors would have heard sounds of people talking at around dinner time. Now, the people that are over for dinner may or may not be Tawfiq that stayed for dinner. There's only one single article in all of the articles about this case that mention this Tawfiq person. So either this article is completely wrong, or this Tawfiq gentleman was not the person who stayed for dinner and simply left after meeting Meherun at 4. And so from all reporting online, it just seems like this Tawfiq guy visiting isn't a detail of great importance to this case, which is why no article mentions him. Anyway, so there's people over for dinner, that we know for sure, but we don't know who they are. And we don't know how long they stay for. After a long night of sitting on the gate of the apartment, the duties of the guards change, and a new guard, whose name is Palash, arrives at the gate at 10 p.m. that night to monitor the building. It's Palash who notices an office car stop in front of the building at 2 a.m. in the night. From this car exits Sagar, who's now returning from his long day at the office. Sagar enters his name in the log of the building and makes his way to the house, just like he would have done on many nights in the past, not knowing that this night was different. After this, at around 5 a.m., Nurun Nubi, the president of the building committee, calls Palash, the guard, and tells him that he can hear moaning sounds coming from one of the houses in the building and asks him to check and see what was going on. In a later statement, Palash says, quote, "I went out of the building and I also heard the sounds of crying coming from a flat upstairs," end quote. He could not ascertain though which flat it was coming from. Quote, "I informed Nurun Nubi about the matter just before the azan for first prayers at about 5 a.m. end quote. At around 7 a.m. that morning, 2 hours after the azan prayer and the moaning sounds are heard coming from the building, Nurun Neher Mirza, Meherun's mother, receives a call from Runi's mobile phone. Thinking it's her daughter on the other line, she picks up. But it's not her daughter. It's her grandson, Meg. The words that leave 5-year-old Meg's mouth on this phone call with his grandmother will change everyone's lives forever. "Mummy and Papa have died," says the innocent voice on the other side, and Meherun's mother falls silent. Upon hearing this, she rushes to reach the apartment in which lay the dead bodies of her daughter and son-in-law. She rings the bell, and the door is opened by a distraught and inconsolable Meg, who takes his grandmother to his parents' room. The room has blood splattered all over the walls, sheets, and the floor, and 2 bodies lay on the ground with multiple wounds, and with a knife still inside Sagar's chest. Sagar's hands and legs have been tied with a bedsheet, and he seems significantly more injured than Meherun. The house also looks ransacked, with all their belongings scattered across, but nothing is stolen from them. Their money, their jewelry, their electronics are all found inside the house. All that was missing, and this is an incredibly peculiar yet important detail, was Sagar's laptop and his personal mobile phone. The door of the house doesn't seem to be broken into. It becomes clear very quickly that the couple knew their murderer or the murderers, and perhaps even let them into the house on the fateful night. When the police arrive, they find a grill in the kitchen window to be cut by pliers, but very quickly rule that out as a point of entry because it was too small for an adult human to fit into. On the crime scene, there arrived 2 sets of investigative teams. By 11 a.m. that morning arrived the first one, being the Bangladesh police from the Tejgaon Thana, under whose jurisdiction the crime fell. And the second arrived, the intelligence branch of the Rapid Action Battalion, which is an elite anti-crime department that arrived on the crime scene because of the high-profile nature of the murder. According to the Crime Reporters Association of Bangladesh, the 2 teams were working on the case independently of each other. In fact, news of the murder spread so fast and became a matter of such high national importance that important politicians, journalists, and inspectors arrived at the crime scene the entire day after the murder, a fact that would later be heavily criticized. At the crime scene, the teams meet the parents of both Sagar and Meherun, and they also find Meg, who's lost and crying, but not fully comprehending how his life is completely changed in the matter of a few hours. Naushad Alam Rajon, the eldest brother of Meherun, told the Daily Star, quote, "Initially, Meg was telling stories such as two people were at their flat Friday night and ate rice with eggs. Meg also told us that he had seen those very two people at a picnic he had attended later that day. Later, Meg became calm and quiet, but we're incredibly worried for him because he has thrown up a few times now." End quote. After Meg gives the investigators this piece of information, they take it incredibly seriously. They reach out to the school to find out who was allowed to attend the school picnic, and the school confirms only parents of the students and the students themselves went for the picnic with a few teachers.
So this picnic happened the day of the murder.
Correct, the morning.
And Meg said that he had seen these two men at the picnic.
Right.
So if only the parents and the teachers were involved as part of the picnic, is the police concluding that the assailants might have been one of the parents or the teachers?
That's what Meg's testimony seems to imply.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing this lead went nowhere because that's not an angle the police ever probed. It's not an angle that ever gets talked about. It's also possible Meg is a little child.
Yeah.
So traumatized by what he's seen.
Remind me, how old is Meg?
He was 5 years old when he discovered his parents' body. That is so much trauma.
Yeah, couple that age with the trauma of that day and your memories can get easily distorted.
Absolutely. It could just be two other well-built men that he's confused them, similar haircuts, whatever.
But we do know for a fact that the assailants were at the very least acquaintances.
There
like was an acquaintance that they shared with the couple, which is why they were allowed inside, which is why it wasn't an intruder.
No. I feel like also since we have this little witness in this crime scene, if it was an intruder, that is something that would stick out to him.
Yeah.
He's not describing it as an intrusion. He's describing a dinner. There are these sounds of a dinner that people have heard. There's no breaking into the house. So from all accounts.
And also the fact that Meg was alive meant that the assailants left a potential witness alive. We've seen many cases where if there is a murder that's happened and a child happens to be present, the murder involves the child being killed too.
Yep.
Joshi Abhyankar being one of those cases where the 4 boys went on a rampage and killed anybody in the house,
Correct.
child or not, adult or not. Here, by leaving Meg alive, I think what it could mean is that the intruder had a relationship with Meg and felt guilty for doing what they were doing, because clearly this murder is not born out of burglary.
No,
right?
it's
not that. It's also not born out of rape or crime of passion.
It's not.
If you've stolen the phone and laptop, that's why you were there. It appears to me right now.
Right.
So you're not a killer that is killing for the heck of it. There is a end goal that you're trying to reach. And Meg was somebody you didn't want to be eliminate in that process. So who could be close enough to Meg that he didn't want them killed?
There is also another detail that exactly sort of points to this. It's the fact that Sagar is so much more brutally murdered than Meherun is.
Right.
And it is Sagar's phone and laptop that's been
Right.
stolen.
Right.
It seems like from all the information we have so far that the murder had something to do with Sagar, and the killer had this relationship where they felt bad for Meg and they felt bad for Meherun. Now, with that detail of Meg possibly seeing the two people at his picnic, the investigators sifted through all of the photographs of the picnic to see whether or not there was someone who looked suspicious and could be a possible suspect for this murder. However, like I said, this lead went nowhere, and the investigators chalked it up to Meg being incredibly traumatized and mixing up his memory. But they still continued to hold on to him telling them that there were two people over for dinner that night. The family did not let the Daily Star interview or speak with Meg after the murder, but they let them take a picture of him. According to the Daily Star, observing the kitchen from which the grill had been removed, it seemed like somebody boiled a pack of noodles at night, as an empty noodle packet and a salt sachet were lying on the kitchen floor. Also, there were 2 pots half full of water on the gas burner, while an egg had been left untouched near the burner. The newspaper says it's not clear what Meg saw when the crimes took place, but those who spoke to him in the morning say the kids saw in the house some persons with firearms in their hands scuffling with his father. After arriving at the crime scene, the teams worked swiftly to take the bodies outside the house. The autopsies of the 2 bodies took place at the Dhaka Medical College morgue around 1 p.m. And while the crime scene gave hints to the brutality of the murder, the autopsy revealed so many harrowing details. The killer stabbed Sagar 28 times, 6 in his chest, 2 in the abdomen, 3 in his throat, 15 in his back, and 1 in his thigh. According to the Daily Star, a small knife was found jammed in the right side of his chest. Almost the whole of the blade was stuck in his body. This stab penetrated Sagar's lungs deeply, according to the morgue sources, who added that the knife did not have its handle. They noted that all of the stabs in Sagar's body were straight, and some of the stabs penetrated his lungs and liver. The stabs in the throat partially cut open his esophagus, the passage down which food moves between the throat and the stomach, but his left artery, which supplied blood to the brain, remained intact. The Star also said that Sagar's hands were tied at the back with the bedsheet, as were his legs. The morgue sources suspect that 3 different types of knives were used in the attack on Sagar, because the width of all of these knives and all of the wounds on Sagar's body varied from between 2.5 inches to about 1 inch. The killers made 2 close stabs in Meherun's abdomen. They also stabbed her under her eyebrow, said the morgue sources. Suhail Mahmood, lecturer of the forensics department of Dhaka Medical College, conducted these autopsies. He told reporters that it appeared to him that the killers were, quote, unprofessional. He said if the killers were professional, they would not have made so many stabs, end quote. Now I get that explanation and I understand why so many stab wounds is unprofessional. But from our research at the Desi Crime podcast and cases we've covered in the past, whenever the element of passion is involved in a crime, you tend to see that personal vendetta reflected in the crime scene itself. So for example, the case of Yvonne Johnson, another case we've covered where the girl was brutally murdered purely because the killer knew her. It could be that the killers knew the couple and therefore was sort of avenging a personal vendetta which led to the multiple wounds. And maybe the multiple wounds had nothing to do with the killers being unprofessional. Maybe. But a number of the family members and co-workers have come forward to say that they knew of absolutely no enemies that the couple had that would have led to a murder of this nature. In the middle of all of this, Meg being left behind, like Aryaan said, is also incredibly interesting. Did the murderers take pity on him because of his age? Or was it never in their plan to kill him? Maybe this could also point to the fact that the killers were unprofessional because they showed this kind of empathy to whatever extent they did. What we do know, however, is that neither of the bodies were found to be sexually assaulted. And it appeared that the murderers showed a lot more leniency, like I said, to Meherun, as opposed to the brutality with which they killed Sagar. Also, there was no viscera test conducted during the autopsy, which was later criticized very heavily by the public. For our listeners, a viscera report is prepared to determine the cause of death under suspicious circumstances where autopsies are unconvincing, like in this case, because there was so much damage. In these tests, the internal organs of the body are tested thoroughly. Finally, Sagar and Meherun were laid to eternal rest at the Azimpur graveyard, a graveyard for the Muslim population of the predominantly Muslim Dhaka. The very morning of the murder, Home Minister Sahara Khatun, who also visited the crime scene, announced to catch the killers of the couple within exactly 48 hours. 2 days was all she thought it would take, and common wisdom might suggest that to be correct. They were famous, and if they had enemies, that information would come to the surface eventually, and rather quickly. The crime scene also had hordes of evidence in it, and DNA testing was bound to give good results. There was a child alive and well in the house when the murder took place, and he remembers a fight between his father and another man, and also remembers 2 people being over there for dinner. Slowly but surely, his memory will bring that night back to him, and he will provide invaluable information to the cops, right? Sahara Khatun was wrong. This February marked 13 years to the murder, and we're close to the 14th year anniversary of that fateful night. However, even today, Bangladesh and the world awaits for the murderers of the couple, who still roam the streets freely, to be brought to trial. Over these 13 years, the 2 teams working on the case have changed investigative officers, redone their investigation, reanalyzed DNA, and asked for court extensions time and time again. In fact, the Rapid Action Battalion has taken over 40 extensions for trials as of 2020 from the court, but have failed to submit the reports they needed to produce. However, in these 13 years since the murder, there was no shortage of theories, suspects, and possible answers to the question of what happened that morning on February 11th, 2012. The first and probably one of the most important theories is that Sagar and Meherun were killed in an attempt to stifle freedom of expression and freedom of speech. People who believe this theory feel that the government and officials related to them got the couple killed because of the couple's high profile and sensitive work related to Bangladesh's energy production and transactions. Reporters that have worked with the couple have claimed they know of the possible articles that the couple were working on that caused their deaths. These reporters claim that for Meherun, it was her reporting on the corruption in Bangladesh's energy industry, and for Sagar, it was his workings on violence and minority rights within Bangladesh. And people who believe this theory might actually have good reason to. According to an article by UCN News, Bangladesh, like a lot of other lesser developed countries, has catalogued a long list of cases involving abuses and episodes of violence against journalists in recent decades. The article said, quote, "In some cases, the reporters were killed and the murderers never found. In others, a culture of impunity seems to have prevailed. The nation now ranks as the 10th deadliest place in the world for journalists to work, according to an index released by the Committee to Protect Journalists. Journalists and editors in Bangladesh, they say, live with the constant threat of abuse and violence, as well as the spectre of being sued for simply trying to report the truth." End quote. In fact, all family members of Sagar and Meherun have expressed concern over how lightly the police and government officials have investigated this case. Runi's brother, 36-year-old Naushawar Roman, says, quote, "It puzzles us why the government has not been more proactive in terms of getting to the bottom of this case. Maybe the killers are being protected by very powerful or influential people, or maybe our law enforcement agencies are not competent enough to handle such murder cases." End quote. According to UCN News, Naushawar believes the couple was killed because of their investigative journalist work, which may have annoyed or threatened to expose the wrongdoings of certain powerful groups. Quote, "They didn't have any personal grievances with anyone, so I have to assume this was related to their jobs, as the killer didn't take anything of value from their apartment except Sagar's laptop and phone. It seemed to be very well planned." End quote. But while this theory might make sense to us, it also doesn't make sense to many. Who did they manage to piss off so badly with their energy writings that they were killed so insensitively? They had reported on sensitive matters for very long, so what pushed someone to kill them now? The second most prevalent theory is that of an extramarital affair turned foul. Mahfuzur Rahman, the chairman of ATN Bangla, where Runi worked, made a public statement on the case while he was in London. He claimed he was certain that the couple had died because of an affair Meherun was having. But not just that, he claimed that he has videos relating to the deaths of the couple that night too. His remarks caused widespread outrage among the journalists of Bangladesh, who believed he was just trying to taint the image of the now dead victims. Out of anger and agitation, the journalists of Bangladesh demanded that Rahman be arrested for his comments. But here's the irony. You can't be both for free speech and then want someone to be arrested when you don't like their exercise of free speech. And that's the problem with advocating for this, that if you want it for yourself, you'll have to stand up for the rights of someone else you vehemently disagree with. And that's a tough pill to swallow. But just to be sure, Rahman is no less. Upon seeing the agitation against him increase and build up over time, he files charges against the journalists protesting against him to have them arrested. But it was a case he eventually lost, and nothing came of the affair angle in this case after that or ever again. Over what is now more than 13 years later, the motive of this crime is still lost, and perhaps is one of the most important keys in solving this murder. But the cops in this investigation, mind you, have claimed that they know for certain what the motive of the crime is, but they've chosen to keep it a secret from the masses for this long. From the two teams that investigated this crime, we have a series of suspects that they believe could have killed Sagar and Meherun that night. In fact, it wasn't an ordinary list of suspects. It was a list of 7 suspects. The first is a man named Rafiq Islam, an alleged robber who the cops thought killed the couple with an accomplice named Bakul Mia, who's also a robber. But nothing was stolen from the place, so that kind of doesn't make sense. Other people on this list were robbers Minto Piada and Muhammad Saeed, Meherun's friend Tanveer Rahman, a driver named Kamrul Hassan Arun, security guard Humayun, and security guard Palash Rudrapal were also on this list. Palash Rudrapal is the same security guard who was on duty, the guy who heard them crying. He became a suspect when the cops realized that the murderers entered the building and left the building, but the guard had absolutely no idea. The guard also heard of the couple's moaning sounds the morning of their murder, but didn't do anything about it. In a weird turn of events, right before the cops arrested Palash Rudrapal, he disappeared for a very long time. When he was finally caught much later, after his arrest, his parents disappeared and haven't been found since. However, all of these suspects seem less like plausible murderers and more like people the cops have tried to fit into their own narrative. There's absolutely no physical evidence linking any of these men to the crime scene, not that we know of. The motive of these men to commit this crime remains unclear, and most importantly, the cops chose most of the men on the list simply because they were suspects in another prominent murder in Bangladesh. The brutal killing of Dr. Narayan Chandra, an assistant professor who might have been a victim of robbery, but relatives suspect it was a planned murder. And you guys know how he died? While his wife was out of town, two people entered his house between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. and stabbed him multiple times. His mother, who was on the ground floor of the house that night, heard his moans and helped rush him and took him to the hospital, where he died instantly. It's like somebody copy-pasted the murder. He died under circumstances eerily similar to those of Sagar and Meherun, making it one of the reasons that cops chose to interrogate the same suspects for the murder. However, despite this high number of suspects, none of them have led anywhere in so long. The developments in this case reached a plateau, progress slowed, and the country forgot of that fateful day. Until March of 2020, when DNA reports from the crime scene were sent to the FBI in the US, where they were finally analyzed and results came out. The report stated that the couple were likely killed by two men on account of the unidentified DNA of two men found in the crime scene, specifically in the nails of Sagar and Meherun, indicating some kind of struggle. But you guys, 2020 is long over and justice still seems far away. By August 24, 2022, the probe had been postponed 91 times by the RAB. Month after month, the same refrain. More time was needed. On October 31st, 2022, it was the 93rd extension, and by March 6, 2023, the 96th extension. It was during this time that the law minister conceded in Parliament there was no time frame for the probe at all. Then, in a dramatic turn, the High Court intervened. On September 30th, 2024, the bench of Justice Farah Mahmood and Justice Muhammad Mehboob-ul-Islam removed RAB from the investigation and ordered a 4-member high-powered task force to be formed by the Home Ministry, with PBI chief as convener, and a strict 6-month deadline to complete the probe. Quote, "We hope justice will be ensured this time, and the 6 months given will mean 6 months," the judge declared in court. By October 23, 2024, the task force was formally formed. But even under PBI's watch, the clock kept spinning. On May 22, 2025, PBI filed to interrogate Tanveer Rahman, a family friend arrested in October 2012 and later released on bail. They argued he had last seen Runi alive when she rode with him the day before the killings, and because he skipped their funeral and stayed incommunicado afterwards, he needed to be questioned to gather vital clues. That request pushed the probe deadline to July 8, 2025, marking the 119th extension. By August 11, 2025, the 120th deadline passed with no submission. Amid all this, a bizarre rumor surfaced in spring of 2025 that key case documents were destroyed in a fire at the detective branch. Panic rippled through legal and media circles, but DMP and PBI both denied the fire, attributing confusion to difficulties retrieving old files after staff changes. The High Court still granted the task force another 6 months that day, an extension to the extension. Now, as of August 15, 2025, the case stands where it's been. 120 deferrals, no charge sheet, no justice. Investigators change, agencies shift, but the families still stare at the same unanswered question. With Meg now thinking, it's no longer who or why, the biggest question is when. If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.